Hi everybody, it's Lee Locklear. Welcome back to the Cutting Edge Garage. As promised, we started a brand new video series comparing the Snap-on P1000 scanner versus TEXA IDC5 software. Today's comparison will be on a 2017 Harley-Davidson Road Glide that you see behind me. In our last video, we performed the same exact comparison on a Ducati Monster, which in case you missed it will be in the description below. Make sure you check it out. Since that video premiered, we've received feedback from customers and viewers who felt that the comparison was a little unfair since TEXA is the factory scan tool for Ducati. So as promised, we're going to hook up both tools to this Harley, which should be an advantage for the P1000 given the long relationship between Snap-on and Harley-Davidson. So stay tuned while we get this bike hooked up and start scanning. Okay, we're going to start with the P1000. We already have all of our cables hooked up. We're going to go ahead and now, before I get started, I'd like to mention one of the things that I really did like about the P1000 was the auto ID. So we're going to go ahead and select auto ID. I've already selected Harley-Davidson from the main menu. Continue. It's a very quick identification process. Now we have the option for display fitted systems or display all systems. Again, something that I really did like with the Snap-on P1000. It does separate on this bike what is actually fitted to the vehicle, and then also gives you the option to select any modules that could potentially be on this vehicle. Okay, so we have all of our modules listed here. Looks like we've got engine, anti-lock brakes, body control module, hand control module left, radio, and speedometer. Okay, now we also have clear all codes read by the code scan, and obviously one of the places that we want to start is the code scan. We're going to do a quick code scan, check all of the modules that could be present on this vehicle and see if there's any faults stored. Again, a feature that I really do like about the P1000. And it could be me. You may want to check the video that we did on the Ducati. Seems as though on this Harley-Davidson that this code scan's a little bit slower than what I would expect it to be. We'll also compare that to the TEXA IDC5 software once we get to that. I'm assuming I didn't see anything that said we're finished, but I'm assuming that our code scan is complete. So we've got codes in the body control module and in the radio control module, and we're going to actually look at those codes and their descriptions once we get into the individual module. We can scroll down and get our descriptions here. Now, one thing that I really don't like about the P1000, and not to really pick on Snap-on, but let's call it what it is. This is 2020. This is a 5.6-inch monochrome screen that's not using the latest technology. What I should be able to do, what I feel as a technician I should be able to do after running a complete code scan, is to double click on this and start the diagnosis in that module directly. And you're going to find with the TEXA IDC5 software, that's exactly what we'd be able to do. And if you were using current technology in the Snap-on tool, we'd be able to do that as well. For the money involved in these two tools, I would expect current technology. So instead, of going to that module directly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to back out and I'll go into these individually. So we're going to go into engine first, continue. Just like we did on the Ducati, we're going to want to compare how many data PIDs are available, what the bidirectional capabilities or functional tests are for this model, and so on. So now that we're in the engine, we have the options of read codes, clear codes, data, freeze frame, functional tests, and ECU ID. So if we select the ECU ID, we're going to get the part numbers, calibration IDs, and similar information. Okay. If we go into the codes menu, when we did the system scan, we didn't find any codes in this module, so we're not expecting to find any codes now. And as expected, there aren't any. Hit exit. We're going to take a look at data. And one of the first things that we want to look at when we're looking at the data is how many data PIDs are actually available. And we have two options here. We've got operation values or operating values and configuration. Compared to the IDC5 software, this is going to be similar to data and status, which is the way TEXA outlines it. So when we go into the operating values, we can scroll through. And I'm going to count these as we go. It looks like we're dealing with 44 data PIDs in the P1000. We'll compare that to how many data PIDs are available in the data list from TEXA shortly. So now we're going to take a look at the configuration data list. And obviously, once we get in here, we want to find out how many data PIDs we're looking at. Looks like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That puts me down at the end of the list. So it looks like we're looking at 8 data PIDs. If I've counted those wrong in this list or in the operating values list, I can assure you it wasn't intentional. One of the things that I absolutely loathe about this scan tool is it doesn't actually give me how many data PIDs I'm dealing with. One of the things that I really do like about the IDC5 software is at the top, I'm going to know exactly how many data PIDs I have. Now, basic features of the scan tool, we do have the ability to graph data, although I'm limited to 1, 2, or 4 graphs. And again, this isn't a full color graph. We're dealing with this monochrome screen. So we're going to back out of this. Now we're going to go and we're going to take a look at our functional tests. Okay. In the actuator test, we have air cleaner intake valve, we have cooling fan 1, cooling fan 2, coolant pump, idle air control valve, servo motor exhaust flap. A couple of these, so we're looking at 6 bidirectional controls according to the list. Having said that, this is a little perplexing, to be honest. Cooling fan 1, cooling fan 2, and coolant pump, I'm not sure why they're listed here. This is an air-cooled engine, or appears to be an air-cooled engine, because we couldn't find a cooling fan or a radiator. Now we're going to go ahead and test the idle air control valve and the servo motor exhaust flap. According to the software, that test needs to be done running, so we're going to go ahead and start the bike up. Okay, first one we're going to do is the idle air control valve. I'm not sure exactly what this test is supposed to do. I would assume that we should be seeing some kind of idle control, or be given some type of idle control. There's nothing in the instructions that tells me what to hit or what expectation I should have with this test. I hit start, nothing happened. I have to assume that this test is not working as designed. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at the servo motor exhaust flap. I'm getting a request out of range, not exactly sure what that means. Obviously the test isn't working. There are no instructions on what that test actually does. Okay, again, another test with the engine idling. Transmission's in neutral. And again, request out of range. So essentially, let me go ahead and turn this bike off so you guys can hear me a little bit better. So essentially, we have 6 tests displayed or optional, 3 of which aren't applicable to the vehicle. The other 3 we tried. They're all key-on engine idling tests. We didn't have any success running those tests either. It is possible that we didn't do the test properly. There are no instructions in here on how to properly run that test. I'm not, by my own admission, a Harley factory technician, so I'm not sure exactly how those tests should run. I can tell you from my GM experience on an idle air control valve test, I would expect to be able to control the idle air up and down, open that valve, increase and decrease RPMs. I wasn't able to do that with this. And the air cleaner intake valve and servo motor exhaust flap gave us conditions out of range error messages. So essentially we're showing 6 tests that are useless, in my opinion. Now we're going to take a look at special functions, configurations, now here we have an option for program, return, servo motor exhaust flap disabled, automatic compression release enabled. So I'm assuming this is how we can go in and set the configuration. So I get why we got the servo motor exhaust flap disabled. I get why we got the timeout message there, or the error message. It appears that this is disabled on this bike or not fitted. And then we have the cruise control, and then we've got the exhaust emissions dynamic control is disabled. I'm not sure what the program button does. Given the fact that this is not my motorcycle, I really don't want to press the button and find out. We can go in here and try to enable that exhaust flap. It says it's enabled now. So theoretically, we should be able to now go back to our other test and see if that test works. So let's try that. I've got to run through and select that again. So now I know what the program button does. So if we want to go in and select that or enable the exhaust flap, we have to go in, select yes, we want to enable it, then hit the program button, and supposedly that writes it to the ECU. So now we'll go back to our actuator tests. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the bike. Okay. Request out of range. Again, an error message. You saw that we went in, enabled it. Maybe it's not fitted to the vehicle. To be honest and fair, I do not know. We are going to go back and change that configuration for the owner of this vehicle. Okay. So we're going to back up. We're going to go back into special functions, configurations, continue. All right, servo motor exhaust flap enabled. We're going to change it to disabled. And we're going to hit program. And we're going to hit exit. Let's go back in and look at it. Make sure that it's saved. And it is disabled. So it looks like the program function works. Given that I don't know whether this does or does not have that exhaust flap fitted, I'm going to give Snap-on the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe it's just an item that's not fitted to the motorcycle. That's why that test isn't working. Still a little perplexed on the idle air control valve and the 3 tests that don't even apply to this vehicle that doesn't have a radiator or cooling fan. There always seems to be a lot of backing out here. Okay, back. No, I don't want to try again. Back, back. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the anti-lock brake system. So we go in here. Again, this is one of the systems that wasn't showing any faults. So when we select codes, we're not really expecting to see anything. Hopefully we don't. No faults present as expected, so we're going to go ahead and back out. Okay. We also have the option to clear codes. We have data. So let's go in and take a look at our data list. All right, so we've got 4. Looks like 8, 10, 12, 16. Looks like 16 data pits. And again, if I'm off 1 or 2, hey, maybe Snap-on should add a counter to their software. Functional tests. Again, we have actuator tests and special functions. So we're going to go into actuator tests. We have ABS solenoid valve control front, rear, activate ABS pump. So we're going to go ahead and try these. Confirm, continue. Okay, and although it may not be audible on the video, we did hear the solenoid actuate. So that test is working. We're going to go ahead and release it. We're going to back up. Try the next one. And again, though it may not be audible on the video, the test is working. Activate ABS pump. And that should have been audible on the video, and obviously that test is working. So it looks like those activations did work in the ABS. Now let's take a look and see what special functions we have. Special functions, we've got the brake system bleed. And although we're not going to bleed the brakes on this bike now, I do know that in one of our beta shops, we have gone through this process. I do know that that process does work on the P1000. If we go ahead and select that, It's going to run us through, and this is one of the few areas of the tool, especially on the Harley side, this is one of the few areas of the tool that it actually does give you some on-screen prompts as to what the expectation is or what the procedure is for the bleeding system or the system bleed. Okay? I'm going to exit. So we do have the option for front only, rear only, front and rear. I'm going to go ahead and exit. Again, we're not really bleeding the brakes on this system. Then we have the ECU ID. Again, this should be hardware and software numbers, calibration IDs, things like that. Oh. Okay. Exit. Back up. Let's take a look at the body control module. So, codes, this is one of the modules that was showing faults. So we are expecting to see a fault here. We've got a lost communication with radio. We also have some faults in the radio itself. We're going to go ahead and document this U0184 fault for the guy that owns the bike. I'm assuming this is maybe due to low battery voltage or the bike sitting or whatever the case may be. We're going to go ahead and try to clear it just in case it's something that we created during the making of this video. We'll go ahead and do a system scan once we're done, make sure that that fault is gone. Okay, no codes present. It was erased. Take a look at our data. So we've got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. Looks like 36 data PIDs on this one. Take a look at the configuration data. We've got 4, 8, looks like 8, 2, 3, 4. There's handheld. Yeah, it looks like 8. Okay. Functional tests. Go into our actuator test, take a look and see what's there. We have empty fuel tank, fuel pump, horn, rear lighting, turn signal left, turn signal right. So I'm not going to run the empty fuel tank. We have no intentions of emptying this fuel tank. So we can turn the pump on. And that may or may not be audible on the video, but the pump is running. Okay, we're going to back up. So we'll go ahead and test the horn. All right. Now, if that wasn't audible on the video, either we have really bad mics or you should go get your hearing checked. So we're going to test the rear lighting now. Run in here and see what options we have. So we're going to hit our drop down. The drop down gives us a lot more options, which is really cool. So we have both sides on, both sides off. Center brake light on, center brake light off, left side on, left side off. Looks like right side on, right side off, and all lights on and all lights off. So we'll run through and we'll test all of these individually. You should be able to see this in the camera as we do it. So let's go both sides on. And the lights are working. So now we're going both sides off. And the lights are back off. Center brake light on. Again, working as designed. Left side on. Right side on. And all lights on. Okay. That was very nicely done. I really like the way that they laid that test out, and then when you select the rear lights, you have multiple options to be able to turn them off individually as groups and so forth. So that was done very nice. Turn signal left. It's working on the rear, working on the front. Turn signal right. And again, working on the rear. And working on the front. I have to say, I was really impressed with how that worked, and if I'm honest, I was really surprised after going through the engine and having an option for 6 functional tests, 3 of which weren't applicable to the bike, 2 of which gave us error messages, and 1 didn't show any functionality. To be honest, I really wasn't expecting these to work, and so I'm pleasantly surprised. So now we'll take a look at the special functions. Go to configurations, continue. It looks like we do have the option to program the key fobs. Now, again, this isn't my motorcycle. I don't have an additional key fob. I'm not going to mess with the man's bike, so I'm not going to change any of this. Feel free to write in and let us know if you've ever actually used this test. We would like to know whether it actually does work. Again, this is an unbiased review of both tools. And that's all we had for the customizations, where basically was the key fob programming. We're going to go ahead and back out of the body controller. We're going to take a look at the hand control left. Continue. Data. So one of the things that we haven't done so far that we should just go ahead and do now is we haven't actually tested the data to see, A, if it is responsive, and B, how fast it is. And as you can see, even though the hardware itself is antiquated, the response time on the Snap-on P1000 is pretty impressive. Very little delay or lag time between me depressing the clutch and the data displaying that the clutch has been depressed on the screen. So in this module, we only have code information, data, ECU ID. That's it. We're going to go ahead and jump into the radio module. We're going to check for codes. And again, we were expecting to see these 3 codes. These are codes that popped up during the system scan. We're going to go ahead and clear these, make sure that we're putting the bike back in the condition that it was when we got it. All right, so let's go. We're going to read it again just to make sure that those codes are gone and they're not hard faults and that they didn't reset. No codes present. Okay, so we have codes, clear codes, and ECU ID are our only options in this module as well. And then we have our speedometer. So we're going to click continue. So we have codes, clear codes. We do have data available for the speedometer. Okay, it looks like 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Looks like 20 data pits. Functional tests, again, they're split between actuator and special functions. Let's take a look at the actuator tests. Like we discussed, there's a bunch of tests available in this module. In the interest of time, we're not going to go through each one individually. We'll pick a few of these at random and go through. We'll start with the 6th gear indicator. It's the first test on the list. Okay, now we're going to hit our drop down. We're going to turn it on. And if you notice here, it's not showing that it turned on. Let's see if it actually did. And on the display, on the gear indicator display, the 6th gear is not illuminating. So let me try this one more time just to make sure. So we're going to turn it off. Let's turn it on again. All right. You'll see that on the screen, 6th gear indicator is still showing off even though we've commanded it on. And not being displayed on the LCD display either. So obviously, one of two things has happened. I think personally that the test isn't working. It could be that I'm doing something wrong or there's a prerequisite to this test. Having said that, there's no indication in the P1000 as to what that prerequisite would be, if there is one. One of the things that I'd like to touch on real quick before we move on is, in comparing these two tools, we're not trying to get into the minutia of this test, this individual test did or didn't work on this particular bike or this particular module. What we're trying to do is show you, the customer, as a whole, the value that you get with each tool. The reality is, if you've been doing this for any length of time, you realize that one scanner or another scanner is going to have a problem eventually. At the end of the day, it's more art than it is science, and engineers make mistakes. The difference is in the two companies is how they respond to the mistakes that they make. Eventually, I'm sure that if someone reports that the 6th gear indicator test on this Snap-on P1000 is not working, eventually Snap-on or whoever they're working with to get the software will address that issue. The difference with TEXA is their proactive approach and how fast they can get that done. And that's really from a customer standpoint, from a technician standpoint, and the ability to be able to fix vehicles quickly and efficiently. That's really the biggest difference between the two. Now we'll go through a few of these other tests, and again, I'm assuming that the vast majority of these probably work, and we could nitpick either tool and find things that aren't exactly perfect. That's not what the exercise today. So we'll go ahead and test the fuel level warning illumination. Go ahead and select that. We're going to go ahead and select our drop-down menu. We're going to turn it on. Then we're going to take a look. It is illuminated. Now, we're going to go ahead and hit the drop-down again. We're going to turn it off, make sure that that light was turned back off. And yes, that light did turn off. So apparently this test is working as designed. And again, there's so many tests here. I'm willing to give Snap-on the benefit of the doubt that the vast majority of them work. So that was the last module available in the P1000. I have to give Snap-on credit. Looks like they've got a pretty good, solid, robust offering for Harley-Davidson. And to be fair and honest, that's exactly what I expected. Snap-on and Harley have a long history of working together, and I would expect that Snap-on would have good, solid Harley-Davidson coverage. The overall comparison of these tools isn't limited to an individual manufacturer. The main reason that we're doing the Harley-Davidson is because we expect Snap-on to have the good level of coverage that we saw in this review. We're doing this to show the level of coverage that the two tools have overall. So when we compare the TEXA to Snap-on, what we should see if we have a professional level tool is something that's at least comparable to that, if not better. Okay, so now we've had the opportunity to take a look at the Snap-on P1000 on the Harley. Like I said, the P1000 performed good. I was impressed with it. I was expected to be impressed with it. if for some reason the P1000 didn't perform well on the Harley, I would have been surprised. Now, the main reason that we're doing this comparison is to see how TEXA stacks up on the Harley, which should be an advantage for the P1000. So we have the, one thing I would like to note in the previous video, and this is something that the customers and viewers also gave us some feedback on. We utilized the Axoni in the last video. One of the cool things with the TEXA software is you have multiple tablet options or display options that you can get. With Snap-on and the P1000, you're going to be limited to that one chassis with the small screen. With TEXA, you can get an 8-inch tablet package, which in the motorcycle environment is the most common. You can also have a 10-inch tablet package, and then we also have the flagship, which is the Axoni. For this comparison, we're going to be utilizing the 8-inch tablet, which is the most common package sold. Now, we've mentioned this before. You may remember from the Ducati video. We have motorcycles, we've got personal watercraft, we've got snowmobiles, and utility, ATV, UTV, quad, that kind of thing. So I guess my point being, in addition to all of the on-road motorcycle coverage that TEXA offers, they also offer jet ski, personal watercraft coverage, dirt bikes, ATVs, UTVs, and the like. So obviously for today, we're really only concerned with the Harley-Davidson, but in some of our upcoming episodes, you're going to see some coverage that we offer for BRP and Polaris and some of the other things and we won't be able to do that in a comparison video because Snap-on doesn't offer that coverage. So let's take a look at the motorcycles. We're going to go to H for Harley-Davidson. Okay. Now, in theory, anywhere I have the orange icon and magnifying glass, I should be able to do an auto ID, pull the VIN. So we're going to run that and see if it's accurate. So, first thing that I noticed is the process took a little bit longer, and when it came back, it's requesting more information from me, so it's wanting the exact engine, and we have a few different options here. We are working with a 107 Milwaukee 8, so we're going to select that and click OK. Oh, sorry. Working that stylus upside down obviously is a little difficult. Okay, so now we have the options, just like in the P1000, we have the options to go into these modules individually. Couple things, I'm going to take a pause here and just remark on a few things. The P1000 auto ID process seems to work much better on this Harley-Davidson than what the Texa IDC5 software did. The other thing that I liked about the P1000 software is it gave us an option for a fitted systems list and a non-fitted systems list. Now, having said that, there were, in the global scan or the auto scan in the P1000, we found 5 modules that were detected. In the individual items list, there were 7. So even though there's a separation there between fitted and non-fitted systems, how that's identified through the automatic scanning process seem to be a little bit different. We're going to find out if there's any discrepancies in number of modules present versus the global scan with the IDC5 software. So what we're listing here, again, there were 7 modules listed in the P1000, and we're showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're showing 9. We're showing 2 more modules. But again, we're looking at a complete system list versus a fitted or a non-fitted systems. So we're going to go ahead and select our global scan. We're using the AP57 cable. I'd like to remark on the cable just for a brief second. This is a newly designed cable by TEXA. When plugged in, there's an LED in the center of this that shows that the unit itself is powered up, and that there's power going through the connector. It also has auxiliary power leads here, and it also has both the 4 and the 6 pin that we need for the Harley-Davidson, all in one convenient cable that's very competitively priced. Now that we have the TXB and the cable hooked back up, we're going to go ahead and select the AP57 cable, which is the one that we're using. We're going to hit continue. Now, again, going back to the Ducati video, this is something that I really appreciate that the TEXA engineers have done. In most of the selections that you're going to find in this software, you'll have videos showing you where the diagnostic connector is located. In some cases, maybe it's very easy to find that connector. In this particular case, as I mentioned before, I'm not a Harley-Davidson factory technician. It would take me a while if I didn't know where this connector was to actually find it. So if you're an aftermarket technician that's looking at a multi-brand aftermarket scan tool, there's going to be variations on where those manufacturers decide to hide their diagnostic connectors. These really convenient videos, as you'll see, show exactly where that connector is located. And it's all about saving time. And if you're saving time, you're making money. So we're going to go ahead and select next. And now the IDC5 software is going to send the information it needs over to the TXB or the interface device and do the global scan. I'm going to hit confirm. Number one, it seemed to take a little bit longer for IDC5 to run that global scan than it did the P1000. In addition to that, while that test was running, I didn't see a status bar to let me know that something's going on. There was something down, there was a little weight down at the bottom of the screen, but there's nothing, no type of status information letting me know that, hey, something's happening and that there's not some kind of bug or glitch or whatever the case may be. And given that slightly extended scanning time, that may lead me to think that there's a problem and start all over again. So now that we've completed the scan, we're showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 modules, none of which are stored, have any code stored. And we have 2 modules with the red LEDs indicating that they're either not there, not present, or for some reason we're not communicating with them. Now, one of those happens to be the ABS control unit, and I don't know why that's one of the modules that we're not showing. As I mentioned earlier, there were a total of 7 quote-unquote fitted modules available in the P1000. But during the global scan, only 5 were detected. The 2 that were missing were the left and right hand grips. If you notice here in the global scan, we're finding the left and right hand grips. We're not finding the radio and the ABS. So what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things? Obviously, there's issues on both sides. The fact that both, I think it's ironic, the fact that both scan tools both found 5 modules and did not find 2 modules that it did have I'm assuming, did have the ability to communicate with. And we'll find out here in a minute because we're going to look at this ABS and the radio control, and we're going to make sure that we do have direct communication with it. But these modules were not detected in the IDC5 software during the global scan. Now, one thing that we can do, as I mentioned earlier, with modern technology, we can double click and we have a shortcut directly from our global scan to the direct diagnosis for that given ECU. All right, and we're in petrol injection or engine. So let's take a look at, and again, you may remember from the Ducati video, we're always going to default to the faults page. The reason that we do that is 9 times out of 10, when you're diagnosing a problem, whether that be on a car, a truck, a motorcycle, whatever the case may be, 9 times out of 10, the first place that you want to go is faults, because you have a light on, you have a check, an alarm buzzer going off. There's some kind of indication that you should be scanning the vehicle, and the first thing that you want to look at is whatever fault codes happen to be stored in that system. Now, there's no fault codes found here. If you remember, we did clear a few codes with the P1000. So we're going to click on parameters. And I remarked on this before, and if we look on the parameters tab, I am highlighted on 1 of 28. So it looks like we're coming up a little bit shy on the amount of data PIDs available. 28 for IDC5, 44 for the P1000. Now, when we start talking about filtering data, graphing data, and things like that, it's a little bit easier with IDC5. So if we double click on these, we can put it into a graph mode. And we double click again. And it takes it back out. We can also filter our data in a quick way. I can remove my filter, and I can also go to my custom or my favorites list. Really cool thing about this is every time I select this Harley-Davidson engine and I go in here, whatever data configurations I set up in my favorites list are always going to be there. Okay, so for example, if I do this, and we'll highlight this and this, hit my check mark, and it's going to ask me to name it something, and we'll call this test. And hit my check mark. Now, every time I go into my favorites list, test is going to be there. I can later on go in and add some additional data PIDs to that list if I want to. I can take some away, or I can just delete it. So moving away from parameters, we're going to jump a couple tabs across the top. We're going to go to status. Okay. Now, again, this is something that I like about the IDC5 software. Once I'm in the module that I'm working in, I don't have to do a lot of backing up. I'm going to work all of the information that's available to me, whether that's settings or activations, ECU info, whatever the case may be. I'm going to work that with these tabs going across the screen. Another clear advantage of being able to use open architecture Windows versus a proprietary system like the P1000. So on statuses, we're showing 5, and I believe we were showing 8 on the P1000. So it looks like, as far as number of data PIDs in the engine system, the P1000 it has a clear advantage there. We were looking at 44 with the P1000 and 8 configuration data PIDs, which would be the same thing as our status data PIDs, where we're showing 5. ECU info is going to be hardware and software numbers. Okay, there's a little bit more data available to you there than what we found in the P1000. And then let's take a look at activations. So as you remember in the video earlier, with the P1000 we were showing 6 activations, although 3 of those weren't applicable. We had the coolant pump and cooling fan 1, cooling fan 2 that obviously were not applicable to this engine. Then we had the 2 that were giving us the error message and 1 that just simply didn't affect the change on the engine, so we were assuming it does not work. I'd also like to remark on the fact that there was very little information, if any at all, on how that activation is supposed to be carried out. So if we notice here, we're only showing 3. We've got IAC stepper motor, idle speed control, and intake control valve. So we're going to go through these and see if these actually work. So we're going to do IAC stepper motor first. Okay. We're going to select that. We're going to hit start. We're going to confirm. Activate with engine off, confirm. And confirm. And I'm not hearing a stepper motor run. We're going to try this again. We're going to go through the other two activations and come back to that one. We did run the bike for a few seconds so to get it warmed up and to recharge the battery. So there is some exhaust cooling down in the background. It would be hard to hear a stepper motor click or run with that ambient noise. So let's go ahead and do an idle speed control. Let's see what this says. Start. Confirm. Activate with engine on. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start this bike up. So we're going to go ahead and test that idle speed control now that we have the bike running. We're going to select that. We're going to hit start. Confirm. Activate with engine on. Confirm. Okay, so now we have a few, or a little bit of information, a few words to guide us on what we should expect out of this activation. So it says if we go up or down with the arrow key, we should increase by 8 RPMs, and to the right or to the left is to increase or decrease by 40. So we'll go up by 8. You can see the command changed to 1008, 16, 24. What I'm not hearing is the RPM change like it should be. So we're going to arrow right. We should be at 1064. We're still under 1,000 RPMs. So this test is obviously not working as designed. We're going to go ahead and hit cancel and back out of this test. And go ahead and turn the bike back off. Okay, now we have the air, intake air control valve. Confirm. All right, this also wants it with the engine on. So now we'll go ahead and hit confirm. Cannot energize, press confirm. So again, either conditions aren't met or the test isn't working properly. Very similar story to what we found with the P1000. I'm going to go ahead and turn this bike off so you guys can hear me a little bit better. So, looking back on what we experienced with the P1000 and what we're seeing with Texa's IDC5, looks like both companies, both scan tools, have a little bit of work to do in the engine activation category. I would say that it would be splitting hairs, to be honest with you, to declare which tool is better in that category. Obviously, we did notate that the P1000 had a few more data PIDs than what Texa IDC5 did. Having said that, it also displayed activations that weren't applicable to this bike and other activations that didn't work properly. We had fewer activations displayed here, but those activations didn't work either. Okay, so we're going to move on from activations and we're going to go to settings. And if you remember, on the P1000, we were showing 4 configuration options in the engine ECU. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. So we have 6 configuration settings versus in Texa's IDC5 versus 4 in the P1000. Okay, let's go ahead and jump out of the engine. So now let's take a look at, we're in the ABS system. Let's go ahead and take a look at our parameters. Now we're showing 3 parameters here. And according to my notes, we had 20 data PIDs with the P1000. So let's take a look. What we didn't have in the P1000 though was a statuses or a configuration data as they call it. So let's take a look. We have 3 data PIDs. How many statuses do we have? We've got 1, 2, well, we have 10. So as far as an overall data list, we had 20 data PIDs with the P1000, 13 with the Texa IDC5 software. Obviously, Texa has a little bit of work to do in terms of making sure that all the data is available in this system. We weren't showing any faults. Okay. We covered statuses. We go into ECU info. And again, we're going to have hardware and software numbers. We do have a little bit more information available in Texa IDC5 versus the P1000. Now let's take a look at activations. So in activations, there were 3 actuator tests and 1 special function in the P1000. So the actuator tests were like ABS pump and so forth. And I believe that was one of the tests that I ran for you that you could hear audibly in the video. So we have front application solenoid, front release solenoid. We've got pump engine voltage control. We've got rear application solenoid control. And then we have rear release solenoid valve control. Now, we're going to go through these and see if these tests actually work. Now, it may or may not be audible in the video, but there is a high-pitched activation noise in the background. So we're going to confirm. And then that noise went away. And again, that may or may not be audible, but it does appear that this activation is working. We're going to try this one. Start. And again, you may or may not hear that audible click in the background, but that solenoid is clicking. And the pump is running. You should have been able to hear that audibly in the video. And again, there was an audible click for that solenoid. And confirm. And again, click for that activation, and that test is working. So as far as the activations go in the ABS system, there's going to be a slight advantage that's going to go to the Texa IDC5 software. There were just simply a few more activations that were present in IDC5. Now, there's a special functions area that I'm going to show you in a minute. That's where your brake bleeding is going to be found in Texa's software. So the 1 special function and then the 3 actuator tests, that was total in the P1000. The 1 special function was the brake bleeding, and then there were 3 actuator tests. So we're showing 5 actuator tests, all of which worked. So again, slight advantage to Texa IDC5. Now, let's go ahead and jump out ABS and look at some of the other systems. So we're going to go to chassis electronics control. It's showing that it picked this module up in the global scan. It is not a module that was found in the fitted systems for the P1000. Now, obviously, we're in a module that the P1000 didn't recognize as being on this bike at all. As far as parameters go, we have 1. Statuses, looks like we have 33. So there is a good bit of information available in this module. hardware and software numbers. Looks like axle, calibration IDs, part numbers, and so forth. Activations, we have several. So we've got the alarm, brake lights, fuel pump. This could be what was considered the body control in the P1000, and it could just be a name thing. So let's go ahead and go through these tests, because that is where we found those tests, and the P1000 was in the body control module, if memory serves correctly. So we're going to take a look at this alarm command. It's one of the commands that we didn't have in the P1000. I'm not expecting this to work because I don't believe that this bike is actually equipped with an alarm. So we're going to hit start, confirm. It says activating. There's no audible noise. I'm not hearing anything. I didn't see anything on the dash, so we're going to assume that this test is not working, or the system simply isn't fitted to this bike. We're going to go test our brake light, hit start, confirm. So we're going to say that this test does not work. We have error clearing, which is going to be our fault code clearing. We have fuel pump. We'll go ahead and run through the fuel pump test, confirm. That should be audible in the video, and the pump is running. We'll hit the down button to go ahead and turn it back off. And we're going to go and back out of that. Left indicator, start, confirm. All right, turn that on. It's working in the rear, it's working in the front. Go ahead and turn it off, confirm. And then the right turn signal. Start, confirm, command it on, working in the rear, and working in the front. Hit the down arrow, turn it off. Now, a couple things I would like to remark on. The P1000, I do like the way that Snap-on gave you several different options as far as your light configurations. We had, all lights on, all lights off. There were several different options as we were going through those bidirectionals. In terms of overall bidirectional tests, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We had 6 tests available with Texa's IDC5, and 5 of which worked, 1 did not. We had, according to my notes, we had 6 bidirectional tests available in the body system for the P1000, all of which worked. Now let's take a look at the configurations. There were 11 configurations available in the body controller for the P1000. Let's take a look and see what Texa has to offer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 6. So we've got 6 total. So there's a slight edge there to actually a little bit more than a slight edge, almost double the amount of configurations available in the body controller for the P1000 versus Texa's IDC5. Now, one thing, when I go back to show you where the brake bleeding is, I told you about the special functions area, and you may remember that from the Ducati video. One of the cool things that I like about the Texa software is when you're doing common things like brake bleeding or a configuration or an adaptation, Texa doesn't necessarily make you go through the entire diagnostic process to get where you need to be. There are a lot of configurations that are found under special functions in the main screen before you even start the diagnosis with the bike. We're going to look at the left hand grip. The P1000 was showing 12, and we're showing 7 here. So again, looks like Texa has a little bit of work to do as far as the data that's available. And I would like to remark, as far as the special functions or bidirectionals or anything like that, there was nothing available in the P1000 or in Texa IDC5. So now let's take a look at the right hand grip. I'm curious to see if we actually get the same error message or a similar error message from Texa as of an unrecognized system as we did with the P1000. Okay, we're looking at 6 statuses. Again, the P1000 was showing 12, but we did have an error message that said all or some of that data may or may not be applicable to that bike, or may or may not be accurate. So it's really kind of hard to say, obviously, since there were 12 data PIDs in the left-hand grip, it would be reasonable to assume that there should be 12 on the right side, but we don't really know that for sure. What we do know is Texa showing 6. We did not get an error message that the system was unrecognized or it was loading a default diagnostic system. So we'll back out of the hand grips. We'll move on to our next module, which is going to be the speedometer. And Texa's calling it the revolution indicator. We're going to press confirm. All right, no faults. Parameters. We're looking at a total of 8. So checking my notes over here, we had 20 data PIDs available in the Speedo. There was not a breakout between the two. So we're looking at 8 parameters. If we go over into status, we're looking at 16. So we're showing a total of 24. It's very possible. The way that Snap-on is breaking their data out obviously is slightly different than Texa. Overall total number of data PIDs available between the statuses selection and the parameter selection, slight edge to IDC5. Let's take a look at ECU info. Again, hardware, software numbers, activations. Okay, on activations we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So we have 21 activations in Texa's IDC5 versus 16 activations available in the P1000. So now we'll go ahead and try one of these other tests. And again, since we're not going to be doing all of them, I would like to try the same tests that we tried with the P1000. So we're going to go through, we're going to look for the 6th gear indicator. It's really neat how Texa labels their activations alphabetically. That way it tells me exactly where I'll be able to find that in the list. So we're at the 6th gear warning light. We're going to hit start. Okay, 6th gear warning light, press confirm to continue. All right, so we're present value is off. We're going to command it on. And we're going to take a look and no indicator. So we're going to assume, just like on the P1000, this test simply isn't working as designed. So slight advantage to Texa here on the activations. There's a few more activations available than there were in the P1000. Again, I like the way that the activations are laid out alphabetically, and I like the interaction when you're in the activation screen, instead of having to hit that drop down to turn stuff on, drop down to turn stuff off, and so on. Everything just seems to be just touch and go, much more efficient, much more technician friendly and workflow oriented. So let's go ahead and back out of this module. Okay, and the last one we have is the radio. Now, when we scanned the radio with the P1000, we ended up with no data PIDs. Was read codes, clear codes only. So let's see what we've got with Texa. So Again, we default to the faults page. We do have a few faults stored in this system. They're showing as current active faults. It could be voltage related. Battery did get a little bit low. As I mentioned before, we went ahead and started the bike up because we didn't have the charger connected to it. But we do have statuses here, which is unique because with the P1000 in the radio system, we were read codes, clear codes only, no data. So this does give us a little bit of input information as far as the radio is concerned. We've got our ECU info, and then under activations, we're going to have our error clearing or memory clearing. Now remember, you don't have to go to activations, and that error memory clearing will be found pretty much in any activation screen in any module. But it's always also found directly on the fault screen under the erase button right here. And we're going to confirm. And we're going to confirm again. We're back to a green status, which means, again, even though during the rest of this diagnosis these codes are going to be displayed, they're effectively erased from ECU memory. Now, as promised, before we move on to final thoughts, I'm going to go ahead and back out of this global scan because I did promise you guys a couple things. I said I would show you the brake bleeding, and if I don't show you that, I'm sure that somebody out there in YouTube space somewhere is going to say, oh, they don't even have that test. So let's go ahead and go into special tests or special functions. And we're going to go into ABS bleeding right there. So we have change vehicle configuration as well. And we also have idle speed adjustment. So if I go into ABS and I hit start, select my cable, confirm, this is going to start a direct diagnosis with that ECU and give me a shortcut way to go into ABS bleeding. Let's say I don't have any problems. This is just a normal brake service that the bike is in for. I don't necessarily want to have to scan the vehicle, go in to the ABS system, then find the settings or activation screen, then find the activation I'm looking for and go through there. There's a real quick, easy way to get there just by going through the special functions from the main screen. I can go straight to ABS bleeding and then get to the procedure that I want to carry out. Go ahead and click confirm. When we go to activations, you got error memory clearing, and we go to settings, we've got the ABS brake bleed. Now, I'm going to back out of this. You know, I'm basically just showing you that yes, the test is in there. I personally have run this test on bikes before in the shop, and I do know that it works. The other cool thing is, just like the P1000, it's also giving you the walkthrough instructions on how that test works and what interaction you should be making with the bike. So, in summary, the Snap-on P1000 performed pretty well on this 2017 Harley-Davidson Road Glide behind me. The purpose of this video was to show an honest and fair comparison between the two tools. I think if you've reviewed this video, you'll find that I've done exactly that. My goal, even though Cutting Edge is one of the main importers for TEXA Diagnostics in North America, one of the largest independent distributors in the world, my goal isn't to show a one-sided version of a tool, which is exactly what you would expect from a lot of competitors. Our ultimate goal as a company is to see to it that our customers make an educated buying decision. Our viewers suggested that we did an unfair comparison because TEXA happens to do the factory software for Ducati. Snap-on has a long history of relationship with Harley-Davidson. If that's true, great. If not, maybe the dealer shouldn't say that. So that is why I started this video with the idea in mind that the P1000 should have a clear advantage because of that relationship between Harley-Davidson and Snap-on. When it's all said and done, to be completely honest, I was slightly disappointed in both tools. The P1000 performed well, although it had a lot of bugs and glitches in it. We had some tests that didn't work properly. We had some tests that were displayed under the fitted systems that didn't apply to this vehicle at all. We had bidirectional capabilities that were missing in the Texa IDC5 software, as well as a few modules that were a little light or lean in the data offering. So as a technician and a former shop owner, I'd have to say that, to be honest with you, if I was working on this bike in my shop, I'd be slightly disappointed with both tools. So let's talk about that overall. What does that actually mean? So when you look at the tools overall, in addition to Harley-Davidson, TEXA offers so much more. You have 9 vehicle lines that are available in the P1000. If your only interest is to work on Harley-Davidson vehicles, this probably would be a pretty good tool. Although I think after watching this video, most people would agree with me. A lot of technicians would be just as frustrated as I am if they actually had to service this bike and ran into some of the problems with the scan tool that I did. Conversely, just because there's more coverage available by TEXA doesn't necessarily make them the better tool. As I mentioned in the Ducati video, and what I'm a firm believer about, it's not just the scan tool. Snap-on's a good company. They make a decent product. In my opinion, when it comes to diagnostics and the process, Snap-on is more dollar-oriented than they are customer-oriented. That's as my experience as a Snap-on franchisee and a former Snap-on employee. My experience in working with TEXA has been one of surprise in the commitment that the engineering teams bring to bear, not just in the bike environment, but in all of the environments that TEXA writes software for. So at the end of the day, you're going to get a tool, a good tool, either way. What kind of service are you going to get when it's said and done? I can assure you by the end of next week, whatever bugs or glitches I ran into with the IDC5 software today on this video, after I give this video to the engineering team, will be rectified. The problems found in the Snap-on tool may or may not be. TEXA comes out with updates almost monthly, sometimes more than one update a month. So they're constantly working to make their product better and better. In addition to that, you're going to get local English-speaking, or I shouldn't say English-speaking, bilingual tech support that's available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And this isn't just tool support. This is actual vehicle-based diagnostic assistance in addition to tool support at no additional cost. The retail value of the tools are roughly about the same, $3,500, $3,600. Snap-on is going to be available, obviously, only from your local Snap-on dealer. There are several outlets to get your TEXA scan tool. They're available through the other mobile channels. They're also available through Advance, AutoZone, and some of the other companies out there, as well as a lot of independent distributors throughout the country. The level of service and support that backs this tool compared to the level of service and support that you're going to get that backs this tool is just one-sided. And that's why, no matter what I compare these two tools to, TEXA is always going to come out on top. The level of commitment that they bring to the customer and the desire to provide the best level of service and support to the customer is what is going to put TEXA out on top every time. The commitment that their engineering team brings is second to none. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Again, this is going to be a series. We're going to do this on and on. We did Harley-Davidson just because of the feedback that we got from the Ducati video. We didn't want to show it as this is an unbiased video. We wanted to show all of the customers out there that if you're in the market for a scan tool for motorcycles, there's only one clear choice, and that's TEXA. And we want to show you that by showing the overall value. The only way that we can show you the overall value is to continue this video experience and offer you more videos. What you're going to see next is we're going to find something in the Asian variety. So we did Ducati. We've done Harley-Davidson. We're going to do something in the Asian family now, whether that be Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki, whatever the case may be. I don't know. And then after that, it'll be a little bit less of a comparison and more of a showing off the additional power and capability of TEXA, because Snap-on just doesn't cover everything that TEXA does. So when we get into BRP and Polaris and things like that, we won't be able to compare the two tools because as of the making of this video, Snap-on just simply doesn't offer that coverage. So again, this is Lee Locklear with Cutting Edge. Thanks for joining us in the Cutting Edge Garage. We look forward to seeing you soon.